So let's kind of talk about, well, what's happening today and where we're going tomorrow. So this is gonna be very tactically focused, so less about like what is AI and some of these things. But I thought the best way to start out would be with this quote from Harari that I thought was sum things up pretty well with what's going on today. That the electric light did not come from continuous improvement of candles. In other words, we're always focused on those incremental changes, incremental value adds, but there's no way to go from wax and a wick to what a can or to what a light bulb is, right? They both emit light, but it's a tremendous leap in how we actually do the work to emit that light. And that's really the opportunity that we have with artificial intelligence, right? We call it the third model of computing, whole new types of capabilities. So this is not just about necessarily coming in and saying, here's our existing processes. Let's just add AI to automate that. The honest truth is people, process, technology are very interconnected. When you change one, you create changes in the other two. So to get the most value means you get a ripple effect across three to make that happen. To give you an example of what I mean by this, let's look at Ant Financial. So it was actually a company started by Alibaba's original CFO, and they're focused on micro lending. And their whole mantra is 3-1-0. So it takes the applicant 3 minutes to fill out the form, 1 second to make the approve or reject decision, and 0 people involved in that process. Right. And it's interesting because in the lending industry, particularly the mortgage industry, everyone kind of rolls their eyes at me. That's great. That's fine for micro lending, Neil. I mean, you're talking about small amounts of money, but that's never going to fly in the lending industry. That's what they said 2 years ago. Literally less than a week ago, I was giving the keynote speech at the Mortgage Innovators Conference. And guess what everyone's trying to work on? Their version of 3-1-0, right? They know that the process is just too elongated. There's easier ways to integrate, AI to kind of streamline things, to speed up the process. And so now they're trying to figure out their own version of 3-1-0. So they realize it's not just, this is what we do today. It's like, here's what we should actually be doing, well, tomorrow, literally tomorrow, to get real value from this. So I really liken this to the tractor, right? You look at the picture on the left. This is actually how farmers used to effectively plow and till their fields back in the 1910s, 1920s. When the tractor was invented, people actually thought it would be the end of farmers. Not kidding about that. But you see today, it's just the farmer is doing the work differently. It's made the farmer more productive. That one farmer can now do the work of what 10 people used to be. Does that mean we have less farmers? Actually, no. It just means we actually have now the ability to grow more food at a lower price point, but actually grow better quality food. So the amount of like food waste and all these things actually has gone down. And that's what we're going to want to look across our own industry. So today, if you were to ask me, what are the top 5 use cases in financial services? This is what they are: automated financial reporting and summarization, predictive budgeting and forecasting, risk management and fraud detection, compliance and regulatory reporting, and strategic decision support. And I'll talk a little bit more about these in a moment. But I know these are the top 5 use cases because I've helped a lot of organizations actually do exactly this. I know that they are actually doing this today, and they've gotten a strong benefits case from it. So what does this actually mean and what does it entail? Let's just break it down real quick, one by one. So the automated financial reporting summarization, no secret. You think about the amount of data that we have out there, even all the financial reports that we generate, the statements, even those footnotes. AI can read all of that and summarize all that complex data into a very concise narrative with key metrics and tailor that information for each of the different types of stakeholders. So you get the report you're looking for rather than just one mass report with everything in it. And the companies I work with, they're using just things like Microsoft Copilot, they're using Workiva, they're using Quill. These are the tools of implementation. Predictive budgeting and forecasting, right? AI is amazing at scenario planning, way better than we are, right? The best human can look at, tens of variables and maybe generate 5 to 7 meaningful scenarios. AI is looking at tens of thousands of variables and generating millions of possible scenarios. Monte Carlo simulation on steroids, if you will. So leveraging things like Anaplan or Amazon Forecast to do exactly this. So what they're finding is more robust. You don't need to actually go through and review the million scenarios. Based on probability and other kinds of statistics, the AI will kind of give you its top, 5 to 10 list, then for people to kind of review and say, okay, didn't think of this, or this looks interesting, and put the final thing together. But again, accelerating this process and finding more accurate forecasts this way, leveraging all this data. And then we got risk management and fraud detection, and we're seeing actually more push by the different regulatory bodies, especially the SEC, to actually use AI. The lending industry, they're telling them that they want AI to actually do the approval calculation. We're going to see new regulations come out later this year where they're going to start mandating that you use AI to actually look for fraudulent documents. So, but already today, you got a lot of companies using AI just to look for those outliers, those anomalies. So they're looking at real-time transactions to see what stands out. Like, just it was like 4 or 5 months ago, I took my family out for dinner. It was a nice dinner. We had amazing service, so I left a very nice tip. Literally, as I'm walking out of the restaurant, I get a text message from my credit card company, and it's like, "Hey, we noticed you just ate at this restaurant, named the restaurant, and you left, a 32.1% tip. You normally tip, 26.7%. Did you mean to do this?" And I did. But it shows you how quickly they're looking at some of these things. And you think about the number of credit card transactions they're analyzing. But again, you have powerful tools like SAS's fraud security, API, you got the stuff from Darktrace. Even MasterCard has a fraud intelligence uh, platform that people use. And then we got compliance and regulatory reporting, our favorite stuff. But you've got a lot of organizations now using AI they're just automating some of their compliance processes. They're also having AI monitor for any changes, right? Anything that's going to be, switch it up a bit so that they'll always stay compliant. They'll always stay on top of it. So the AI can adjust. And that's the great thing because AI remembers everything it reads, hears, says, does, experiences. So it remembers every line of every regulatory code. So it makes it a lot easier to do this. And you have tools like AppSend and Ascendance RegTech to help you implement this. And then we got strategic decision support. So provide insights into market trends, customer behavior, operational performance, all these things. So you're taking a lot more real or near real time data to actually put together something that to make a more informed decision at the spot, as well as to pivot as necessary. And they're using things like Tableau and ThoughtSpot to do that. So these are the top 5 use cases going on in financial services right now. Obviously, there's a lot more, but these are the top 5. And some of you may be doing some of these things, or you might have tried to do some of these things, or you're thinking about like, I probably need to do these things now. And that's good, right? That's kind of where the industry is going. But the bigger question I actually get today is how did they do this? I've had several, people, companies come to me and say, I look at your top 5 list here. We actually tried to do a couple of those and we failed miserably. It seemed like it was more hype than anything, but then we turn around and our competitors are actually doing these things and they're not as smart, or cool as we are. How on earth did they pull this off? Well, you got to watch out for some of the key pitfalls. And the biggest pitfall I see people make is They think AI is software. It is not. AI is not software. You cannot buy a box and get what you want. AI is a completely different computing model, right? You don't program an AI, you train it, which means you have to train it on your data, on your business processes, meaning there's always a level of customization. So when I tell people how to think about AI is not software. Think of AI as a high energy intern, right? That AI is ready to do whatever task activities you want it to do, no matter how menial, how grunt work it might be. It's ready to do that 365, 24/7. But just like any intern, you have to teach it first how to do that work. So AI is a high energy intern. Get that mindset. You're already halfway there to being successful. Second biggest challenge these companies face is, well, what tools do I use, right? Well, that's the other big problem here. There's 12 new tools that come out every day around AI. Some of them are not really AI, some of them are just hype, some don't really promise what they do, but there are some that do come out, maybe not on a daily basis, unfortunately, that are very powerful, and people are actually blown away what's quite possible. This list you see over here is something I put together of tools that I know and work as they're supposed to in the real AI, true value adds. But look how long this list is, how big it is, right? It's hard to just sort through all this stuff and figure out what the right tools are. And again, at the end of the day, it's not just a mismatch of tools together, right? You have to do that level of customization on your own data and your own processes. To give you an example of this, I worked with a sizable VC fund. I can't tell you which one. And one of their big pain points, the tedious sets of work, is due diligence. Right? It's not the funnest of job for any of us, but as they're looking at potential portfolio companies, they're pouring through the pro forma, they're pouring from market research, and I'm just wondering, is there a way that AI can actually help us do this? And yeah, and so we leveraged a few of those tools, but we also had to teach the AI based off the VC's capital investment strategy and its own internal data and the performance with its portfolio and things we could grab off that are public data. But now they actually have an AI that will actually comb through the portfolio, the pro forma projections, do market research, will look at comparable companies and flag things like that make sense. Like, well, the revenue is growing much faster than their customer growth, for example. So flag those things for a person to actually go in and dig in and see what's going on here. So this has been a lifesaver because it's reduced their time on due diligence by 70%, right? But they couldn't just plug in a couple of tools and make this happen. And the other interesting thing here is it's actually changed now how they approach investing in startup companies. So, it used to be the VC fund, you come in, you would apply, you would send a tear sheet, some info, do the pitch. They liked you, then they would say, okay, we'll take you to due diligence. Well, now, guess what they do? When you apply, they ask for the pro forma up front. They ask for some of these key diligence documents up front, and they have their AI actually go through, look at it. They'll see how many flags are out there, do a little review, and if everything looks good enough, then you'll be invited to do the pitch. And as a result, while they're seeing fewer companies, the quality of their pipeline has radically improved. So now they're just wasting their time on, well, this looks great, looks like a great management team, but then you'll start looking at the detailed financials and going like, oops, this is not really, they don't generate enough free cash flow to ever give us a ROI that we need. And then third, look, we all got some smart technologists, right? And we're like, look, I'm not a technologist. I don't understand a lot of this AI stuff. Well, the truth is as smart as those people are, they don't understand the on the ground problems that we have in our work. The problems of merger acquisition broker or an investment banker or a financial analyst or even someone like a loan officer, right? I liken it to this. Would you let Elon Musk do open heart surgery on you? would you let Mark Zuckerberg manage your investment portfolio? Right? Most of you are probably shaking your heads because they're not trained in that. So the question is, why are you counting on them to build the AI tools you need for your business? Right? They just don't know it well enough to do that. Right? They're busy building the tools. Right? They're building you the hammer, the saw, the screwdriver. It's up to us to figure out what's the best way to actually use those tools. That's why the most successful AI tools, products, services actually came from people in the industry. So don't underscore the domain expertise. You need something, you see an opportunity with AI, you're wondering where that box is. There is no box. It's not software. That solution is going to come from you. And then fourth, we have this blinders problem, right? Because we're used to, you know, computers doing certain things. And so we don't realize with these new capabilities that AI can do some things, right? Like we've actually seen that AI is much better at reading the emotional state of a person than another human being is. And we think that's not possible. AI doesn't have any emotions, but guess what? AI can look at your body language, can look at the inflection of your voice, your word choice, deconstruct all that. It's looking at 100,000 variables per second to figure out your emotional state and can radically change. It'll pick it up right away, right? It's got that laser-like focus on you, whereas the best humans looking at 5 to 7 variables, and we might be thinking about other things, like what we want to say back, or there was some weird noise in the background, or I'm wondering what the kids are up to, you know? So we may not believe it's possible, or we may believe AI can't do it better, or we may believe that AI has to do it perfectly. Well, the honest truth is, AI can't do anything perfectly. We'll never get 100%. So it has human teachers, and we're flawed. We use our data, which is also flawed. So it's not a question of it being perfect. It's a question of the human using the machine. So the human plus AI, is that more accurate than just the human or just the AI? So to give you an example of this, right, there was a nonprofit called Guiding Eyes that came to me and they said, look, we look at young dogs or young puppies as young as 7 years old, so 7 days old, sorry, and we try to figure out which ones might be suitable seeing eye dog candidates. We train them, and then we match them with a person in need, and our success rate is around 30%. So not bad, but a lot more people, it could be a lot better, right? A lot more people need help. So they asked me, like, could AI help us do something? In all honesty, I'm just thinking to myself, like, I have no idea. I mean, dogs? Well, let's take a look and see if there's any options here. So, did some research, check things out. And it turns out there's actually a lot of data on dog psychology. It's like, okay, interesting. So we built an AI system, trained it up on dog psychology. And so now when the guy and eyes folks are looking at those 7-day-old puppies, they have a little AI looking at the video of the puppies, and the AI is looking at how the puppies play, interact with the mom, all these things, and together to try and figure out which dogs will probably make the best seeing eye dogs. Mm-hmm. And selecting those dogs, the AI will help the people craft a unique training plan based off of that dog's personality, so the learning style. And then once the training has happened and completed, the AI will do a psychographic profile. So across the 56 personality traits of the human candidates looking for a dog and the 56 personality traits of the specific dog, and look for the highest level of match. So then, put them together. The guy in eye is now doing this and seeing their, stickiness rate, their success rate go from 30% to 81%. Right? Will you imagine that AI could help not just train, but match based on personality, the dog to the human? Right? That's something that most of us wouldn't have believed. Huge missed opportunity, huge value creator right here. And then the last pitfall a lot of people fall into is automation. We're trying to automate everything, right? That's what we're used to. Computers historically do something faster, cheaper. less errors. And yeah, you can do some of that with AI, but you're only tapping that 23% of the value. Remember, when you automate something, you're automating all the flaws that exist in that process as well. What we really want to find is a new way, a different way of doing the work, right? It's not necessarily about fixing something that's broken. We just know that as we get better tools, better processes, there's a better way of doing it. And that's what we call innovation. So we want to try and find a way we can change the process or the system, do that work differently. So you look at the mortgage lending industry, right? Think about appraisals, whether it's for a new home loan or a HELOC or something like that, right? You would send an appraiser out, they would take some photos, they would do some of these things, and look at some comparables in the neighborhood and come up with, effectively a raw type of estimate. Well, today there are now companies using AI to do exactly that. They actually empower the homeowner or the agent with just 6 photos. They can actually appraise a property, right? So when you take the photos, the AI even tells you you're not holding the camera at the right angle. You know, take a step back. You do this, and so it's guiding for the right things. And as it's doing that, it's using other capabilities like depth perception. So it could actually analyze the true square footage of a room and an area. It's actually pulling information from the blueprints, the city records, from permits. It's looking at comparables. It's looking at even things like the exterior shot. Does it look like the foundation might be cracked? Are there other, it's looking at all these points and it's coming up with a more robust appraisal, more accurate appraisal without the need now to go find a traditional appraiser. So it's even reduced the cycle time to collect and process the loan information, which is a big win for everybody. So a new way of doing the work. That's what we really want to do. So we go back now to our top 5 use cases. You look at what's going on. Yeah, there are elements like automation here, but a lot of this is actually focused on a new way of doing the work. Now you might be thinking to yourself, great, this is helpful, Neil. If I'm not doing some of these things, I definitely need to get on board pretty quickly. Absolutely. But if you just focus on these 5 use cases, all you're trying to do is play catch up. And I get there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that things are changing so fast that as you try to play catch up, the industry is leapfrogging ahead of you, right? But you actually still have the leapfrog opportunity yourselves, is to look at where we're going to be in a few years, right? Wayne Gretzky, I always thought it put it well. He's like, I'm successful in hockey because I don't skate to where the puck is. I skate to where I think the puck will be. So where the financial services industry going? Well, these are the top 20, the top use cases in 3 years, or actually 2.5 years by 2028. So this is actually where the industry is trying to march to. And I know that some of the companies have already started and partially have some of these things. So the top 5 use cases: autonomous financial strategy modeling. So, we normally work on something, we try and implement it. Now it's like AI is constantly looking. So developing a strategy for optimization as things start to unfold, they even haven't fully come out, geopolitical change, regulatory change, crop failure, something issues in the supply chain, you know, all these things start factoring in and say like, this is how we have to readapt our financial models. Second, generative AI, so things like ChatGPT or Perplexity, so Gen AI, board reporting, and investor relations. So actually now generating some of the documents, the presentations, the graphs, whatever key data for board directors like the board books, or investor relations like the Q&A, but tailored for that specific person. You have a board of 7 people. While the board books will contain all the same information, the way it's presented will be slightly different based on how each person actually consumes information. You're actually making it easier for them to understand in the way they can relate to and provide the information they care the most about. So it's not we're excluding things, it's just we're putting that stuff up front for them, answering those biggest questions first. on an individual basis. Third, well, we're going to use AI for ESG and carbon accounting compliance. We're seeing a lot more push, maybe not so much in the US at the moment, but on a global scale, we'll see more push. And as we actually, companies operate, they actually do these things, AI can actually capture information around carbon emissions, recycling, and start stacking that. So you can actually stack real-time data and have a true picture without at the end of the quarter go through and look through all this stuff and try to extrapolate that information. Fourth, real-time AI risk orchestration and scenario stress testing. I know that's a mouthful, but again, it's really as things unfold from a socioeconomic, geopolitical, we're going to kind of recalculate our risks, both the threats and the opportunities, and roll out some scenarios to understand what might happen and how we should actually take our financial strategy in the near future. So, I mean, and there's already a company doing some of this in the commodity space. So, you get the Minister of Energy for like OPEC making something, and the AI is listening to it and saying, like, wait a second, they're saying this, but between the lines, they're really implying they're going to do this. This is going to, impact industries that require heavy levels of oil and gas, like plastics. We have to rethink our scenarios and start laying that whole process out in real time. So we get much more adaptability and agility. And then last, the cognitive workforce optimization and AI talent ROI modeling. I know it's another mouthful, but basically we think about our ongoing talent needs, what kind of skill sets, the training, all these things. AI, again, will help us do this in real time. So as we come out, and we might come out with new products, we can get our workforce ready before that new product is even out there. So this is where we're marching to. So you can look at those top 5 use cases today. Definitely, if you're not doing all of those, or your clients aren't, you want to get them on a track. But if you want to create the leapfrog opportunity and not get left behind, you need to start thinking about these top 5 use cases in 2028. So I love this quote by Chris Grossner. Basically, opportunities don't have them, you create them. And this is the opportunity that we all have, particularly with those 5 use cases for 2028. So that's my spiel. I wanted to save time for questions. In case I don't have time for everybody's questions, or you want to ask me something privately, or you have something you want to bounce off me, feel free to reach out to me. This is my contact information. There's a contact form on my website. If you're looking for more resources or articles to read about what's going on in financial services, you can check out my Substack or my LinkedIn newsletter. Great sources of information. And if you want to scan the QR code, that's just a way to give me feedback about my talk. So I'm going to riff for a moment to give people a chance to take any pictures or scan the code. But I do want to make sure that this was more tactically focused this time around so that you know what's happening and you can actually get ready for all these things. Because the honest truth is we live in hyper change. We're going to experience 100 years worth of change in just 10 years. So it's not a lot of time to get ready for that. And so with that, let us open up for any questions people might have. All right, I think Laura, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Let me just lower my hand. So I'm getting really at the step 1, you showed that slide, how. So I'm using QuickBooks, I'm using Sage. I want to experiment with this financial reporting. Do I have to export it all to Excel and then run Microsoft Copilot, or what's the best way to get started with that?
There's a lot of different ways. So it depends on the tool. But the great thing about things like Copilot, they're actually integrated with Microsoft Office.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these Gen AI tools can actually read all different types of document types. So even if they're images or video. So you shouldn't have to need to convert everything to Excel, but you do want to at least help it understand some parameters it may not be familiar with. Things like ROI, hurdle rate, it'll know those things. But if you have some unique things, the way you collect metrics, or you have some unique metrics themselves, you want to be able to explain that to your AI tool first. right? Because it's just not going to know everything off the top of its head. It'll know the base thing, but it knows the base stuff, the kind of the 101 things that you would know as a like a financial services person. But more complex or more organizational specific things, that you do have to teach it.
But how do I make the move from either data inside of financial software or a CRM system to AI? How do I introduce one system to the other?
So, some of these systems like Quicken actually do have plugins to some of these AI tools that you can actually leverage. And then some may not. So you may have to export the data in some sort of format. But I would check first, depending on what tools you have, what the AI plugins are. And you might be surprised that like even things like Copilot have a lot of different plugins for it.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, William.
Hey Neil, great presentation, very timely. Given if you listen to a lot of CNBC and podcasts, I think there's two terms you hear a lot of. You hear AI used a lot, and more recently you hear the word tariffs come up a lot. But I'm not gonna. This isn't about tariffs and the economy. More around your presentation. Is there maybe a baby step that companies can look at when trying to go from, I'll call it analog, to say warp speed to get to AI? Because I think there's always you hear about hear about it more and more. We need to use AI to take out some of the guesswork to do modeling. I'll look at Excel, for example. I believe Excel has a Power BI component in it to maybe help with dashboards, for example. So if there's a company that doesn't have the investment funds, or I'll call it the budget allocated to invest in maybe AI where they can plug and play, is there something they can do maybe with Excel to kind of as a use case to kind of get their feet wet before they go to warp speed?
Yeah, and so I always tell people think big but start small. And so when you're looking at what some small things you can do, you can actually leverage some Gen AI tools, whether it's Copilot or ChatGPT or Claude or something like that. But you could take a spreadsheet. Unless you're paying for the AI tool, I would not take any sensitive data. But you can actually give it this data and say, look, I need to create kind of a graphic for a board of directors meeting, or from this set of information in this database, I need to create projections over 5 years on COGS and revenue or something like that, right? You start with something simple, or just have it try and so start analyzing the data for you and try and create that kind of graphic. It's a very small step, but you can see how does this work, and just start realizing, oh, I should have added this parameter, or I should have included this. And so you start learning that way how to create better prompts. That's a good first step. After that, what I tell people is to leverage what I call the concierge model. So you can use a SLM, small language model, and all the Gen AI tools have this. You create a very small universe where it does something very specific. So, a very common one right now is the HR concierge. You just upload in the AI your employee manual, your benefits information like PTO, 401k, all these things. And so it becomes an expert in your HR stuff. And so if an employee has a question, rather than go to HR rep or go to a portal and search for it, you can actually just ask the AI. You can ask the AI, like, how do I take, family medical leave? Or what's the policy on tuition reimbursement? But if you were to ask it, like, how do I book a conference room? We'll just go like, I don't know how to do that. But that's like actually a very small, another self-contained thing you can do. There are concierges you can actually do in financial services for your company. Right now, the most common one's more around accounting type of work. But yeah, those are the ways I would think about it. Try and create some graphics first from raw data. And then as you kind of graduate, go into the concierge, just get comfortable with that. You'll start realizing there's more and more things you can do. But those are the first couple of good steps for you, William.
Great, thanks, Neil. And will your presentation be shared and made available?
Yeah, I can give them a PDF of it, and I think they're recording it, so I'm sure it'll get posted somewhere.
Thank you.
All right. Omar.
The these models still hallucinate, right? So if you're doing predictive budgeting and forecasting, how do you ensure that some of the outputs being generated is accurate? How do you validate that? And secondly, also you said that like still AI is not accurate. So if you are utilizing it for, let's say, for financial reporting, external financial reporting, what are some of the key things which you should look at?
Okay, so great questions, Omar. So remember how I said AI is a high energy intern? Would you just let the intern submit their work as is, or would you review it, right? So that's why I always say you gotta treat AI like a high energy intern. Whatever it generates for you is always a draft, right? It's gonna get you 40 to 60% of the way there. That's the way you look at it. You go in, you have to probably correct a few things, just like with an intern, add a few things, put the polish on it before it's the final product. And that's what you have to do here, right? Often these hallucinations arise because either there's not sufficient parameters, right? And so you need to refine that, or unfortunately, it's either using misinformation or malinformation, or we have the other issue now that there's so much AI generated content that can actually skew how the AI actually works. We have what we call the 4-level problem. So you generate something with AI, you put that content out there, another AI is doing work, sees that AI content, consumes it, puts something out, right? Then another AI at 3rd level. By the 4th level, when this AI consumes this thing, it just spouts out gibberish. You have to remember these AI tools, particularly Gen AI tools, they don't actually understand what they're producing for you. They don't understand the content. The way they work is they're using statistics to predict what the next word or phrase is based on the pattern of information, the language they see trying to do this. So as a result, that's why they actually hallucinate. So you always have to do that review. I mean, look at the lawyers that, and I talk to some of these guys, they're like, ask ChatGPT, like, hey, give me 3 cases that support my case strategy, and gave them 3 perfect cases, put them in court, and the judge is, look, I can't find these cases. He goes, I can't find these cases. That lawyer really should have double checked, right, that they were real, right? And the other problem was the prompt. Say, like, give me 3, cases that support my strategy. You never said they had to be real. As humans, we intuitively know in the court of law it has to be real, but the AI doesn't know that, right? So you had a parameter issue there. So you always got to check it. That's why I say their AI is a high energy intern. You always got to check their work, just like we do with a human intern.
So just a very quick follow-up. So are there any structured prompts standard setup? Because again, if you can bias and get different answers that the prompt is not, and not get consistent answers. So is there like a training, or you set certain parameters about the prompt to use it when you're using at the enterprise level?
There are people that do license their prompts. They tend to be very detailed. I haven't seen as much in financial services, but like I have a friend, she makes music. She's a very famous musician. Her prompts are like over 500 words long. She's talking about which notes, the sequence, the melody, the harmony, all these things. When you think about it, it can get very complex. I mean, to kind of explore and hone your prompt engineering skills, I always encourage people to go to like ChatGPT or a Claude or something like that. You can use a free version and just ask it to write your bio, right? And you say, hey, you might, write a bio for whatever your name is, and you'll see some things are probably correct and some things are probably not correct, right? You might have a name that's common, and so it confuses you, or you may have not a whole lot of public information, so it's trying to extrapolate things. Then you start realizing, like, well, if I add my employer, or I add my alma mater, right, or I add my job title, it'll get better and better. Then you really start playing around with it. I'd say, like, well, write it in the active voice, or write it as a rap song, write it in the style of William Shakespeare, or write my bio so that it could be added as a tagline in an op-ed I write for New York Times or something like that. You'll see lots of different versions start coming out. That's a great way just to practice with your bio to build up your prompt engineering skills.
Thank you, Neil.
You're welcome. All right, Norman.
Yes. How much are companies asking for expertise in prompting AI, based on your knowledge? The way, for example, they ask for proficiency in, say, Excel or some other software. How much are they asking for prompt expertise?
It's a great question, Norman. They're not, I'll say, explicitly saying it. They're saying they want people with experience in Gen AI. And the way to use Gen AI is prompt engineering. So you're going to see more and more of that. But the honest truth is, I think in probably 3 years or less, 90% of jobs will require solid, I'm not saying great, but solid prompt engineering skills. Just because, again, we're moving to what we call hybrid intelligence, people using AI, and Gen AI is becoming the most common tool. You're going to have to become good at prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is not a job title, right? I've seen people try and milk this and say, I'm an experienced prompt engineer, pay me $500,000 a year. No, prompt engineering is a skill. It's a skill that we're all going to need to know. All right, Bill.
Hey, Neil, great presentation today. You may recall I'm an FP&A guy. I had recently attended a 6-hour vendor exposition on FP&A tools, and I listed them in the chat. And I was just wondering, it was overwhelming to watch the tools and the demonstrations. And so, what's the best way to compare different tools and then use that information when you go into an interview to go, well, this is what we want to do in FP&A. We should select this tool, kind of thing.
So that's a great question, Bill. And you saw from the slide I put up earlier, there's too many to pick from, right?
Right, exactly.
So what I always say is, obviously you got to do your homework. There's no harm in partnering with your tech people on some of that to understand what some of the best options are. This is the great thing about AI. It's the one tool that can tell you how to use it better. And you will actually tell people, is like, if you're looking at a list of like 10 plus tools, ask something like ChatGPT, what are the top 3 tools for my industry, or I'm trying to do X? What are the top 3 tools for that and why? Always ask the question, why?
Why?
And it'll tell you, right? And then look at that, and then, obviously meet with the vendors, check it out, but ask the vendors some questions. You want to make sure it's legitimate. I always tell people, ask the vendors how they train their AI system. Right? If they can't really answer that question, it's probably not AI. So always be on guard for that, because there's still a lot, like I said, hype tools. 12 come out every day, and most of them aren't really AI.
Right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Bill. Tim?
Neil, excellent discussion. I've listened to a lot of AI discussions, and this is, I think, the best presentation of not just what's going on, but how to use it. I write SEC documents. My question is this: you talked about the 4th level iteration of gibberish, and you almost answered my question, and that's this: when AI compiles various outside sources, what's to keep it a document that are produced just becoming generally mediocre? Not an excellent document, not something great. Can you discuss remarks on creating a complete average among industry standard? And how do you rise above that?
That's a great question, Tim. I wish I had a simple answer for you, but ironically, I was having this discussion yesterday on this very topic. From a technology standpoint, what would help is if we actually have what we call AGI, artificial general intelligence. So this is a self-learning machine. So today AI can only do what we teach it. With AGI, it would actually understand the content of what it's producing. Right. So that's the kind of level we need to handle this. There are other things we can do today, we should be doing today. I mean, people shouldn't just be generating something and not proofing it and just throwing it out there. Right. But that's happening. There was actually, ironically, a study that came out a couple of months ago that in the past 12 months, the Harvard Business Review, I think it was HBR, 80% of the publications were AI generated, which is actually against the rules. right? And so because people are doing this and they're not thinking about the downstream consequences, right? That's the thing. We're people are already weaponizing information and knowledge, but we have a worse thing we call malinformation. It's just misformed. That's going to be more detrimental. I mean, I don't want to pick on anyone in particular, but there's a thing going on TikTok right now about using hemorrhoid cream on your face, right? And you have a few, influencers pushing that narrative. And you have people, you have dermatologists telling people, don't do this. Well, please
New
chat
meaning for the word
GPT it or
asshole,
Google
huh?
it. Yeah, they're not doing this. And this is on the heels where a month ago, other influencers were telling to put beef tallow on your skin. Also not good. So our ability to understand what's good or bad information has already been corrupted. And again, most of the things we're dealing with are people problems. And so there's a people element to this that we don't have a good answer for right now. If everyone
And
just
Neil?
kind of played fair, we wouldn't have some of these issues. But in this day and age, it just takes, 2% or maybe 0.2% of the population to do bad things and mess it up for the rest of us.
One of
Neil,
the things
just to
that threw me
follow
off
on with
initially
Tim.
to AI was the commercial on Super Bowl, where there's a board meeting, a person's asked a question, and he gets all red and leaves the room and punches some stuff up on AI, comes back in with the right answer. Point being, it seems like it's dumbing down the population, dumbing down the workforce, where you don't have to work hard. You don't have to use your intelligence and be good at what you do when you can just go like this. And to me, that again creates the neutral, mediocre baseline that worries me.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Tim. I mean, historically, in every industrial revolution, people kind of rose up to the next level of work, more complexity, more value add, right? And this is AI has triggered the fourth industrial revolution, but I just feel personally that it's 50-50, right? Will we really go and do the next, higher level order of work, which is more creative, first of a kind of stuff? Or is everyone going to go binge watch Stranger Things, right?
I think that's how I need to look at it. It's a 50-50. It'll improve those that are excellent, and it'll create a mediocrity with those that aren't.
Yeah,
thank you for that.
Yeah. I wish I had a better answer for you, Tim.
Yeah.
Or more hopeful answer.
Well, I'm looking for a great use. I'm looking for an AI use, and I'm looking for a practical application. And I don't want it to harm me. I want it to improve my work.
Well, there are opportunities for that. We just always got to think about how, right? This is where we struggle, right? We build to an outcome. So we have to think about what are the other possible uses or misuses. We as human beings are not good at that kind of scenario planning. AI actually is, right? Like I said, AI is the one tool you can actually ask it how to use it better. If we're worried about how this might be weaponized, for example, we can actually ask AI how it could be corrupted. And we would probably say, like, well, you got to be on guard for these types of things.
Thank
Right.
you. Thank you for your perspective.
All right. Any other questions? Laura.
Yeah, I'll just chime in with one more beginner question. When it comes to getting up to speed and practical methods to integrate AI into your workflow, are there trainings or workshops or anything for this audience of financial executives that would be useful? Any tools you recommend?
I mean, there are. I mean, like if you haven't played around with some of these Gen AI tools like ChatGPT, definitely do that. And if you're not getting great output, you can actually ask like ChatGPT how I can improve my prompt. There's some things out there like on Coursera and Treehouse. Andrew Go has some nice basic kind of YouTube videos. I myself, like I said, I showed you, I had links to my Substack and LinkedIn that they talk more tactically and show you how you do some of these things. But it just kind of depends. I mean, like one of the biggest questions I get from people is like, can you help us just figure out our use cases, right? And then from that, what should we actually do in terms of a roadmap and tools to implement? The challenge with the AI space right now is that you have a lot of people that either just talk about it and really haven't done anything, right? They're riding kind of the hype wave, or they're super technical. And so they're talking about heuristics and all these things that for the layperson makes no sense at all, right? So that's one of the reasons I wrote my first book, was to try and just create a non-technical primer for business people. So there's a lot of good resources out there. They're just kind of unfortunately disparate, right? They're all spread out.
Thank you.
Norman.
Yeah, sorry. Bill Gates recently made a comment that he thinks in about 10 years, AI will replace most of us, doctors, teachers, etc. To what extent do you think Bill Gates is correct?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, this is people ask me a lot, will AI take my job? And the truth is, it's the person using AI that's going to take your job.
I've heard of that.
So I've worked with dozens of companies where they came in with the goal to reduce headcount, and 95% of them didn't do that at all. All they did was, well, we took some of this grunt work off, but now they have more bandwidth to do this more important value add work over here, right? Machines are good at some things, but there are things that we as people are still better at, right? That's what we want to try and free people up for. Real simple example, and I'll pick on lawyers, second slowest movie industry I've ever seen. There's a company called Legalmation. It was started by three lawyers. Built a tool. Built a tool to read complaints. Like someone sues you, they will read the complaint, generate the corresponding court documents, generate a counter complaint if needed, start generating deposition questions, start doing research and initial case strategy formulation. So it would take an associate lawyer 10 to 12 hours to do, it does in 2 minutes, right? Then they have a partner review the work, spends about 30 minutes, right? Got to review the intern's work. Does this mean you need less associate lawyers? No, just the opposite, right? What they found now is not having to do that kind of grunt work. They have the associate lawyers now spending more time with clients. They start learning about jury selection earlier. They start learning about rainmaking. These are all far more valuable activities for the firm than reading complaints. And so as a result, their book of business has increased. They're generating more revenue, but they didn't let any associate lawyers go. It's just the work they're doing is different. Right? You think about when the internet was launched, or I should say it wasn't really launched, it became more massively adopted, especially in business. 1998, 1999, you had the introduction of email, right? There were people that refused to use email, right? We look back and think that's probably crazy, but I knew people because they were like, for one reason or another, I'm not going to do this, or EAs are going to lose their jobs. I knew people that if you emailed them, their EA would print it out, read it to the person, they would dictate a response back, and then the EA would type back the email. Those people don't have jobs. They didn't have jobs in a couple of years because they refused to do email. It's the same thing with AI. AI is not going to take your job. AI can only do what we teach it. It can't handle first of a kind situations, right? It's not good at creative thinking. So it's really about the people that use AI. Those are the people you got to worry about. If you're still doing the same thing, if your colleagues have their little AI intern with them, you're in trouble, right? But it's that person taking your job, not the machine.